Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. If you haven't heard, yes, there's been a change. This is now Browns 3D with your host, Jeff Lloyd, brought to you exclusively on the OBR streaming networks. Again, truly thankful and appreciative to be here. Allows us some more time for Pete Smith. As you can see, the chicanery is already underway between two longtime, we'll say friends. We're not friends at the end of the day, but there's no there's balls we'd like to break than each other's. Pete Smith, Jeff Lloyd, again, Browns 3D on the OBR. Certainly a lot to discuss, and everything's just coming so fast right now for Cleveland, which is great, and makes for a great opportunity to certainly, discuss Cleveland Browns football and look, just bury it. You know what I'm saying? Like they used to talk about, bad football games, you bury the sod, bury the ball, whatever it may be. That's kind of what I believe everybody's feelings on 2024 were. Today, certainly, heard yesterday that there may be an issue, certainly. And anybody who remembers, what did I tell you? When I was talking about the quarterback position for 2025, I was saying over and over again, I don't see any way that number 4 is a part of it. Obviously, we all know somehow, some way, number 4 is going to continue to get his money. Well, not only was there a setback, and I don't know, and this will be something that's certainly going to be covered a lot here, certainly, over the next, weeks, months. How exactly did the ankle get rolled? An October 25th Achilles injury. So now you're talking 2 months, probably 2 weeks, 2 months after surgery. Is he still supposed to be wearing a brace? What is he wearing? Because if, normally what you wear after a surgery like that, you can't roll your ankle. I mean, look at how many walking boots are the new craze. You can't go anywhere now without seeing somebody walking around a walking boot. You would have to think, and I'm not a medical expert, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Was he already back to just walking around normally? Who knows? Again, all things to be covered at another time, but he's going to get his money. I never thought he was going to be a part of the 2025 plans, but Pete, here it is, the setback. It was just interesting to hear setback. But now here it is, not even 2.5 months later, and they basically had to go in and basically put the Achilles back together once again.
Right. So the surgery was the October 25th. So he's about a little under 3 months since that. And there are some unanswered questions. The Browns only found out about this on Monday. That's not when the re-injury would have happened because he's already had surgery reportedly on Thursday. So there are unanswered questions, and depending on the answer, that could theoretically affect his contract. If he's doing something he's not supposed to be doing, then that could hurt him in terms of the bonus stuff. And that might be an incentive for him to sort of be cagey with reporting it. To my knowledge, he's never been back to Cleveland. So he's doing all this through doctors approved by the Browns and everything else. So whatever the answer to that is, and I said this the moment he hit the ground, he's never going to play for this team again, ever. And if you've been subscribed to the OBR, the Browns have been moving on, and everything else has been sort of being polite because he could be. There's no sense in making a bad situation worse, and he could make your life miserable if you make it a thing. I don't think they had any interest in that. I think they were going to be as polite as possible and just move on.
Look, this is the way this franchise always does this, though. Everybody, we want the dirt. Spill the tea. What do you got? And, we've certainly had our share of that with the Cleveland Browns in past years. Again, all it does is make bad situations worse. And it doesn't, reflect well on your franchise as a whole. And everybody's always about, how are you going to look to prospective free agents and, agencies of, prospective players, prospective free agents again. And this is just not the way this organization is run right now. They are not going to run anybody over. And, certainly there are a million things that could probably be said about Deshaun Watson's play here. And, and Pete was talking about it before we heard from Andrew the other day. And Pete just wanted something. Like, could you just give us something to say that, like, hey, we're really aware that this was bad? They're not going to come out and say, oh, we agree. It is one of the worst transactions in the history of professional sports. It's not going to go that way. But Pete, to get to this point, and look, we all knew it. I don't think really anything Deshaun wise was going to be judged on 2022. But just where it got this year and the fact that so many other quarterbacks played within the 3 seasons that he was part of this franchise, and pretty much almost all of them found some varying degrees of success. So it's not that hard to say, oh, well, there's a common denominator here.
I think stylistically, there's a thread and a through line for the quarterback position for the Browns. We'll see what happens when, push comes to shove. But like all these people talk about how they want, that Stefanski wants somebody who's going to operate from the pocket and be really efficient and smart and all these other things. But he keeps bringing in guys that he that have tools, and that he's just trying to smooth them out enough to get high level play. And that even starts with Baker Mayfield when he took the job initially. But Joe Flacco was not Mr. Safe. Jameis Winston was never Mr. Safe. Like, these are guys that have big tools. And some of that is a product of where you're playing. You play in the AFC North. You're watching January football, and you see the ball poor Bailey Zappi, the ball looked like like he had no strength in that game. And you need somebody that has some ability to push the ball down the field. So I think that is a factor. So I do think that Kevin Stefanski fancies himself as somebody who can, as long as the quarterback is willing to learn and adapt and evolve and take coaching, I think he believes that you can get really efficient play while getting, sort of the big plays. I mean, Kevin Stefanski's always talking about, avoiding turnovers, but they want the explosives. I rarely look at, and some of this is my own taste, I suppose, too, but I rarely look at the Browns in terms of like the super safe underneath. Like, the only guy I can think of in sort of the history, recent history of this team, if you want to call it recent, is Cody Kessler. That's like the only example of a guy I can go as like, this was sort of the safe option. They just don't go that route.
No. And, and another thing is you're asking for, somebody to, if you're going to work underneath like that, to be, an absolute, surgeon, as far as, their completion percentage, the death of 1,000 paper cuts type of passing game. It's not something that they truly want to do. And it's something that just, kind of doesn't work with the way, their talent, certainly, at the receiver position, the tight end position is, built, certainly, to speak. But, seeing as Pete talked about, big, tall, obviously, and maybe a little reckless, everybody turned in last night. Penn State, Notre Dame. And first things first, I just need to get this off my chest, guys. If Drew Allar had a good night last night, it didn't all of a sudden just change everything. Okay, I think everybody was, if Drew Allar went out there and went 25 of 29, yes, it would have changed things, but it certainly wouldn't have changed the risk factor. Now, coming away from watching that game, and certainly a lot of great players on Penn State to have your eyes on. And I think that's kind of where the eyes were. Certainly, shrunk in the moment. And, I know I've discussed it. I know Pete's discussed it. And everybody, oh, well, he's, the wide receivers. And Pete and I have done this for years. And Pete, if you all know the movie A Few Good Men, one of the things Pete loves to use is, it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what I can prove. So the fact that wide receivers haven't been that great in Drew Allar's time in Penn State, okay, it is, that's fine. That's one thing to say. But that does not mean, and you've seen me talk about it, I have questions about Drew Allar's play with wide receivers. You can't just say because he doesn't have any wide receivers, it's going to be fine. That's an assumption. It is not a fact. He struggled last night. So we'll let Pete talk a little about Mr. Drew Allar. But you want a guy or two from Penn State on this team. There's certainly some to be had.
Yeah, so coming into this game, I thought Drew Allar was going to get killed. I was not. I know he made a couple of good throws.
Notre Dame is not a great team. They have a great defense, but they're not overall a great team.
Defense, but the week before, he had a couple of good throws, but it wasn't like he was blowing away Boise State either. Like, there are real flaws. He does not handle pressure well. And whether you want to call it nervousness or whatever, if he just hits throws that like feel routine, Penn State is up 21-0. He missed that big wheel. Obviously, he threw it at Singleton's knees on the one, and you can say Singleton should catch it, and I agree, but it was a terrible throw. But they also missed Singleton. What? By the way, I like Singleton. Missed Singleton on that wheel route, wide open, and it just overthrew it. And there were a couple like that. He can hit Tyler Warren at times, but he missed one of those too. Again, pressure. He does not handle well. Some of the way he moves in the pocket limits his ability to make throws. Like, he will close his whole shoulder rolling to his left, which I think is a little bit problematic. He doesn't really give himself a whole lot of room. And a lot of this just comes down to experience. He's really talented. Like, there's no denying the tools he has. But he does not look ready. And I suspect in the NFL, there are going to be better teams than Boise State and Penn State, but or Notre Dame. But on the other hand, look, I mean, the thing I expected is what I got, which is Abdul Carter was the best football player on the field, and he did it with one shoulder. He's a phenomenal player, you're going to get people nitpicking and all this other crap. And I've already prepared people for this. I'm not doing this again, where people are trying to talk me into taking Mitch Trubisky over Myles Garrett. I already did that once. I won, and Myles Garrett's going to go to the Hall of Fame, and Mitch Trubisky's currently the backup in Buffalo. You're going to get in the same situation. And it doesn't matter if Abdul Carter is Hall of Famer, but he is special. And the question is, do you take special versus interesting, pretty good, maybe? And I like Cam Ward. I think he's pretty interesting. I don't love him, but I think he's interesting. And I think he's going one. And I already laid out all the reasons that I don't like quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders. I have major questions with him. But, in a world where the Browns have Isaiah McGuire as a fantastic base end, you get so much ability to play a guy like Abdul Carter as the edge opposite Myles Garrett, and then you can do things with him. And I'm not saying they need to rush into it. He can play linebacker if you want him to. You can line him up in sort of a quasi 50 front where, a center or guard has to account for him. And then if he wants to drop and play spy, or if he wants to drop into coverage, he can do those things. And when you play Joe Burrow and you play Lamar Jackson and you play so many quarterbacks that can win with their legs, that speed, that pursuit just takes away so much. And, if Lamar Jackson's going to beat you and you have Carter and Garrett on the field, he's going to need an oxygen tank because he's going to be exhausted from those type of things. So I focus entirely on what he can do rather than what people think he can't. I don't think he's a bad run player by any stretch. He made a ton of plays in the backfield, even on one shoulder. But when you have Isaiah McGuire, it gives you that flexibility to sort of ease Abdul Carter into the mix along those lines. So again, I really like Singletary. I think Tyler Warren's a fantastic player. I don't think he's going to be anywhere in the realm of where the Browns are going to be picking. And I'll be honest, I think Colston Loveland is the better tight end prospect, but that largely has to do with the fact that Colston Loveland has dominated college football going back to his sophomore year, and he's, I think, still 20. He does everything. Tyler Warren is a very, very good player. He's just older, and you have to account for that. I like Colston Loveland better as a prospect, and I don't think the Browns are going to end up with either one. So Katron Allen is interesting. It's going to be a question of is one running back going to declare? Are both running backs going to declare? Or neither running back going to declare? Singleton, to me, does more things. He can catch. He can block. He can be a runner. I think he could be a one-cut runner, which if the Browns are trying to get back into that type of style of offense, I think that can be really good for him. He's really big. He doesn't look it, but he's huge. He's like 220, 225 listed. Now, maybe he's not as big as that, but he runs and hits people like that. Mm-hmm. And again, if Allard throws better passes, he dominates that game in the passing game, let alone what he was able to do as a runner. So, and that's the frustration. Allard, I don't know how long it's going to take to get the vomit out of his jersey, but he has to go back to Penn State. He cannot then jump in the portal and bail on them because he literally cost them the game. And I'll say this straight up, like this is the devil in the details with the transfer portal and the timing and everything. Bo Pribula wins that football game for Penn State. If they had benched Allard and put Pribula in his legs and his ability to run and everything else, they win that football game. Allard tried to throw 2 more interceptions than he got credit for, and they got bailed out. The one was real bad that they called a DPI on, but then he throws the pass you cannot throw in the middle of the field, and just look completely out of his depth. And I think he will be sensational with another year. And Penn State obviously has to do what they can to get more help around him. They're not going to have Tyler Bourne. They might lose one or both of those running backs. They've got to get more help, but I hope he stays there for the fact that he is that talented. And I think he needs to, I think he sort of owes it to them in some respect. Even as much as we talk about college football sort of being a game of mercenaries, I would be very disappointed. Obviously, it's not going to change the world, but I would be disappointed if he then hits the portal after doing that.
And look, this could probably help him more, because if he goes back and it's going to be, hey, I don't necessarily even know who my weapons are, and working with, a new backfield, trying to establish a relationship with the new tight ends. I'm assuming his work with wide receivers, it can only get better. And so it could be a case where Penn State doesn't have the same amount of success in 2025, but Drew Allar certainly can do a lot more for himself in 2025, improving his game. And obviously, look, you look at the side, there's a lot of tools there, but it's kind of like, Ebby Calvin, the Lush in the minor leagues, sometimes I just don't know where the ball's going, that type of thing. And, for him, certainly tighten it up. Singleton, first thing stands out is certainly the size. Grown man right now, day one. You dig a little bit deeper, 100 meter, 200 meter, 4x100 meter sprinter in high school, all state recognized in that regard. Singleton was very, very good this year. And I think a lot of people open up and, the stats are good. They're not great. Well, if you look, and obviously, certainly the other running backs pretty much got the same statistical output. So you got to keep in mind that, you're literally splitting the load there. Abdul Carter, it's just crazy. And, with him as well, high school basketball background, the athleticism, the one where he's lined up, basically 5 yards, maybe a little less, off the right tackle, runs all the way across the other side of the field off the hash, makes the play. Certainly, the sack he had, and understanding he's doing all of this basically with one wing. So very, very impressive. There's a lot of people, and this is where it's tough because, with some big media, they just have that agenda for the Browns. The story was, before the Browns ended up at 3-14 in the final with the number 2 overall pick, the Browns need to find a way to, luck themselves into a quarterback, a la Brock Purdy, which covered up for the whole Trey Lance pick out in San Francisco. And now it's, the Browns are here, and it's, you're there. You lucked in to finding a quarterback. They absolutely have to take the quarterback. But there'll be the same people one calendar year from now going, what in the world did they take Shedeur Sanders for? That was the stupidest move they ever made. It's always with the Browns. It's, we had maybe that, gap in 2020. Certainly 18, we had a nice little gap. 2020, we had a nice little gap. Even last year, we had a nice little gap where people were, going to just look at the Cleveland Browns and give an honest opinion. That's not really the way this franchise has been evaluated, certainly since I have been covering this team in 2017. So you look at it, and I love that you said love when we're talking about the quarterback position. You got to love the guy. This is getting engaged. This is putting everything in your life on the line for said player. I just don't know if I can do it for either one of them. I don't. And, I do believe the Browns should bring in 3 quarterbacks. I'm not saying you don't draft one. Certainly draft one. The Kirk Cousins things, I don't know. But if you want to go out and, throw a dart on a couple of bridge guys, do it. Bring in 3. DTR can stay for the summer. If you can beat somebody out, he can beat somebody out. If you decide you want to trade somebody, you can trade somebody. There's a million ways to go there. But that is certainly, something that is just going to be the case. And, look, the Browns are going to be heavily invested, Certainly the Watson thing. I think the Watson second injury here doesn't change much other than the fact that it is just final now. I think there was always the, as you were saying, the being nice, the being correct and handling the situation. He went in Cleveland, took his exit, physical, That's where it came up. More doctor's appointments, da 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 da. This is it. What is it? 2 ACLs, one in college, one in the NFL. The Achilles twice. The broken shoulder. I mean, this guy is too dangerous to put on the field in a flag football game at this point, because now it's to the point where every time he gets touched, it leads to some serious damage. It's over with. There will be most likely chasing after insurance money, which I believe is $216,000, something like that, or whatever. That would get turned into 26 money. Who knows if he was doing something he should have been doing? Who knows how that works? And a lot going into it. But look, everybody tuned in last night to see, certainly understandable, young man from Ohio, and for what everybody else kind of thought, just not ready yet. My first question here, Pete: Ohio State, Texas tonight. This team's the national champion, right? Whoever wins tonight is the national champion.
I have a really difficult. Well, if Texas could pull the upset, I could see where Notre Dame could slow them down.
Yes, but Texas defense is good too.
I have a really difficult time seeing if Ohio State can get past Texas. I have a really difficult time seeing Notre Dame slow them down. I just think they are too much.
Okay. TreVeyon Henderson is somebody you seem to give me a lot of flack on. Now, my thing with TreVeyon Henderson, and look, not if we're even saying true number one running back in the NFL. Pass pro, Pete, we see signs of it. Can receive, can run. Why is it that and here we go. Why is it maybe that TreVeyon Henderson is somebody that you like, but not necessarily somebody that you love?
Well, because his whole career he's been a part-time player, and he has part-time production as a result. So if you're trying to project,
wasn't there a couple running backs out of Georgia years back that we certainly debated on? I lost, I admit it, and they were kind of a similar case, or no?
No. The thing was that everybody at Georgia managed to put up the production that would suggest they were going to be great. Nick Chubb put up elite production.
Similar to the Penn State guys.
Todd Gurley put up elite production. Nick Singleton's got a better production profile than Allen, but both are fine. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Allen. But Henderson, just the foot and other injuries have slowed him down. And I don't think you can ever treat him like a guy you're going to give 20 to 25 touches. And in this day and age, you may not care about that. True. But I don't know where you draft that. There are just other running backs in this class I just like much better. There are running backs in this class who I think profile better. I think Henderson will test well. I think Henderson will be an interesting prospect. And this is going to be the debate in draft rooms. How do you fit? And the medical is going to be a big deal for him. But is he a guy where you're going to be really excited about him when he's healthy and then he's out or he's slowed down by something? And there are just any number of running backs in this class. This class is loaded at running back,
no doubt.
Where I just look at them and I think they are sensational in terms of just the profile. And we'll see about the athletic testing. Like, for example, I love Devin Neal out of Kansas. I don't think
you have been talking about Devin Neal since probably October.
I don't think he's going to run well. But I'm hoping he's going to have at least the either explosiveness or agility to sort of make up for it. I think the agility is probably his best path forward, but he's just excellent. I mean, we go back to, the whole Shedeur Sanders thing. You watch the Kansas-Colorado game. Travis Hunter is a star in that game. Devin Bush is a star in that game. Shedeur Sanders is also there. I mean, that's sort of the dividing line for me is Shedeur Sanders was fine in that game, but it was clear who the two upper echelon star football players were in that game. And Devin Neal isn't, he doesn't have an endless amount of help at Kansas. Jalen Daniels has been a pretty interesting quarterback. They get some production off the threat of Daniels with his legs, but Neal can do the things. He can run. He can catch. He's just super productive. I love those type of guys. And there are other guys in that sort of mold. The kid from UCF is really interesting. The question is how much of that is realistically going to translate to the NFL. He does some stuff that you just you can't get away with that in the NFL. But between the athleticism and his just his overall production, you can see that translating better than some of the other backs. I mean, there's just, and the list goes on of ACC and Big 12 running backs this year. that are fantastic. I mean, we'll see how high a guy like Cam Scatabo goes, but like it's very difficult for to justify taking a guy like Henderson over Scatabo. I think Scatabo is going to go high enough that it won't matter for the Browns, but there's just a lot of guys. Brashard Smith from SMU is really intriguing to me. If you liked Tyrone Tracy last year and you saw some of the early success he had with the Giants this year, Brashard Smith was a former wide receiver at Miami who did a lot of gadget stuff. He transfers to SMU, becomes a full-time running back, and he flies. Now there are some fumbling questions with him, but he catches like a wide receiver and he runs really fast. And he stood out in every game, even though Kevin Jennings is a really talented quarterback, obviously played really poorly against Penn State. Brashard Smith did not. He was good against a very talented Penn State defense. So there's just a lot of guys in that realm, and it's not to take away from either of Trevion Henderson or Quidshon, but Jenkins. But Judkins. I'm just not there with those guys where it didn't hit the way I thought it was going to this year for either of them. And some of that you can blame on the fact that they're in the backfield together, but there were just games where like Ohio State wasn't cooking on offense like they have gotten to a point where they are now. And now you're seeing, like with Henderson, the healthiest he's been arguably since his freshman year. And now he looks like a sensation. And I don't know how much you want to bet on that.
And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, and obviously when we're going to talk here about, Ohio State, I think on the offensive side of the ball, it is just so damn impossible to look at anybody else without just your full non-attention being on Jeremiah Smith. It's just an incredible, incredible young talent. The game, I think, look, Texas can be tricky, but if Ohio State plays their game, they win tonight. And it's going to be probably, the scenario of the semifinal would probably be more difficult than the actual final for Ohio State. And as much as, people were, Ryan Day was going to be buried after the Oregon game. Ryan Day was going to be buried after Michigan, Now you have, talks that maybe there are NFL teams who would like to speak with Ryan Day. And it's, it is a, what have you done for me lately business football. There is no question about it. Certainly, ton Ohio State Buckeye fans. So, you guys, hopefully after you watch this, leave some great reviews here. You go ahead.
I was just to say that, you talk about Jeremiah Smith, that matchup between the Ohio State wide receivers and Texas DBs is the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Janae Barron is fantastic. I don't know that he's a great fit for the Browns. I think he honestly profiles more of a safety for the Browns than a corner, but he's an excellent football player. They've got a lot of guys that are really good on the Texas secondary. So that's a really interesting matchup. And Texas has a pretty good front. So, it's a question of where the Browns are going to be able to find success. If they can run the ball, they may just ride that the whole way. But that's going to be a really good matchup. And that's what makes Texas dangerous. Quinn Ewers is sort of inconsistent, and you get sort of this explosiveness followed up by some plays where he sort of lets the other team back in the game. But that defense is legit, and it'll be interesting to see how Ohio State's able to do it between Ibuka, who's going to be in this draft, Jeremiah Smith, who everybody's already tanking for in 2 years. They've got a lot of really talented players, and that's going to be a really fun matchup. There, just off the top of my head, I think 5 or 6 of those guys are going to end up in the NFL. It's just a question of what year.
So, if you're working towards 2026, find a way to get 2 first round. Sorry, that would be the 2027 draft. Tank your ass off and get yourself 2 first round picks and go take Arch Manning and, Jeremiah Smith. There you go. That'll be the dream for somebody out there. We've done it for years, Pete Smith and I. And just because, hey, things have changed, different areas, but certainly loving being here at the OBR. I will tell you guys all once again, listen to me. I am hearing things at a much higher rate than you are seeing them on social media, or the people that you think you are following are going to give you the breaking information. I highly, highly suggest you become an insider here at the OBR. This time of the year, they always try to give you a great deal because they have a lot of nuggets to give out. So make sure you check that out. But NFL playoff picks, We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games on the docket. This was a bad time spot last year. First game of the NFL playoffs for 2024. We all know what happened. Here are the Houston Texans in the same time slot, hosting an LA Charger team. I'll just go first here, Pete. I think the Chargers are just cooking. And I see people bringing up things about Ladd McConkey, and I think they were trying to, basically, compare him to Malik Neighbors. And I'm not disrespecting either guys; they both have great years. But Ladd McConkey is doing a lot of this, with the, playing with Justin Herbert certainly helps. But I just think the momentum that everything the Chargers have going on right now, and Houston, maybe it's a step back to step up, because I think a lot of people thought Houston was there too early last year. And it just came maybe too quickly. So this is maybe, even still, you won the division, even still, you made the playoffs. But this could be a year where maybe you're stepping back and then stepping back up next year. It seems to me, I feel really confident Chargers are going to go in here and I'm not going to say have their way, but I think it's going to be a game where, LA gets up early, and I think Houston's just going to be kind of chasing the entire day.
Oof. I think I'm going to go with the Texans despite themselves. And the reason for me is that if you just put Stingley on Ladd McConkey the whole way, you might be set on that side of the ball. And it's really a question of how well can the Chargers protect Justin Herbert from, a pretty good set of edge rushers.
Sure.
Can they cause a mistake? And man, I think Houston can get one. I think they can get one at home. I think they can pull it together enough. They've got enough going for them. I think they can pull together. Nico Collins is still very good at football. The Chargers are relying on 2 rookie corners who have been great this year. I think the Texans can get one. I don't think it will be easy, but I think CJ Stroud can get them to one playoff win, and then they're done.
Okay. Nightcap Saturday night. Obviously just had this matchup recently here. Third time this season, 1-1 apiece to this point. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, Saturday night in Baltimore.
Yeah, I got to take the Ravens. The reason for that is simple. They have not stopped Derrick Henry at all. They have not slowed him down at all. And that's beyond the fact that the Steelers are I think the second worst team at dealing with tight ends in the league. And Mark Andrews is playing really, really high level.
And Isaiah Likely's still a good player. He just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. Andrews got healthier, found his groove. Certainly Zay Flowers had a phenomenal year, but now it's almost to the point where, hey, we're probably going to have to look Isaiah Likely's way a little bit more.
Yeah, and since Zay Flowers is going to be out for this one, it just gets them to lean into what they want to be anyway. I would not be surprised if you see nothing but just giant people on the field for the Ravens to sort of mitigate the fact that the Steelers don't play with a lot of size on defense in general. And it's going to give them added protection, some play action opportunities. They still obviously have guys like Rashad Bateman and some other receivers that can make plays. But if the Ravens are doing the things that the Steelers want to see the least right now, and I don't see a great answer for them. And meanwhile, the Steelers offensively are making all the mistakes I thought they were going to make in September, and they're doing it now. They've got a young offensive line that's getting into some trouble. Their quarterback play is not as good as it has been, and you are relying on the unreliable in terms of Pickens. He obviously since he's been out with the hamstring, has just been nothing close to himself. Dropping balls last week, getting distracted by talking to fans on the sideline. It's everything that, you've seen the high end of what Pickens can do for you. He can be sensational, but he's a dysfunctional human being at too often and at too critical a point where it's foreseeable that at some point during this game, he's going to get a personal foul that's going to kill them. And get into a situation where he's worried about things that don't help his team. And I just think the playoff drought continues for the Steelers.
I'm totally with Baltimore here as the selection. Two things. I think, everybody thought of, how injured was Russ in the beginning of the year? But you talked to a lot of people related to Pittsburgh Steelers. They didn't believe that Russell Wilson could give them 17, 18, 19, 20 games. And now it's starting to look like, Russ is, look, I get old. I'm old. I know it. You just ain't got everything you had anymore. And it kind of seems like Russ, it's kind of where he's at, even to the point where, you have some people who cover the Pittsburgh Steelers suggesting that you may see Justin Fields. You may see Justin Fields play, I'm not saying a good amount, a decent amount. Who knows? There is that. The thing with Pickens, it kind of feels Chase Claypoolish all over again. Like here was this guy with size, could do everything. But the one thing he couldn't focus on is, exactly what he needed to, and Baltimore, they are edgy, they are chippy, they are physical. It's just how they do things by nature. All the things that will find a way probably for somebody like Pickens to, get his head outside of the game. Certainly, there's people talking about, there could be a chance Pittsburgh moves him. I don't know who's lining up for this right now. I mean, I don't know what kind of psychiatrist you have on staff. I wouldn't want the guy in my building.
No, look, and this is one of Mike Tomlin's gifts. He's done a great job being able to, sort of get the dysfunctional to be at least somewhat functional. And, maybe he can get through to Pickens on this playoff run. But it just keeps coming up, and it's just sort of the devil and you're going to be playing with. I don't see a world where they move on from him because don't get me wrong, the other little receiver that Calvin Austin is really good for them in terms of his niche. Like he's a very good third wide receiver, maybe a decent 2. But if you get rid of George Pickens, like that's it. That's all you've got. Like they would have to rebuild basically the whole room around.
And you don't even know who your quarterback is.
And you don't know who your quarterback is. And obviously they drafted the rookie out of Michigan who has been out basically the whole year. So they don't know what they have in him either. So I think that this is just life for them for the time being.
Denver traveling to Buffalo. I think Bo Nix has been extremely impressive this year. I could see this going like a lot of Bills games have gone this year, where, if you weren't watching it, you're watching it from afar, somebody be watching this, it'll be unopposed, but I have this where it could be it's a 3-point game at halftime. And then Buffalo maybe just kind of turns it on in the second half. But I think one thing, that Buffalo, hopefully for them to win this game, needs to be ready for is this Denver Broncos defense is pretty good. They come hard. They rush the passer. They hit the quarterback. This could be a game where Josh Allen's legs be a difference. But I just think going to Buffalo in, a place that, expects January football, has been a January staple for a while now, certainly first go around here for Bo Nix. I think this is one where, at the end, Josh Allen did enough, where it probably proved to be the difference.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bills, but I think this game's going to be weird and close. For the reason you mentioned, the Broncos play really good defense. And this might be a game where the fact that the Bills don't have a receiver that's playing like a premier receiver might hurt them. They've been able to sort of get by with everybody's a number 2 or number 3 and have a ton of success. I can't help but wonder if Denver is going to put the pressure on them in that regard. And they've got a good pass rush. If they can force a couple turnovers, it could get really interesting. The other side is what version of the Bills defense is going to show up. I agree. I think Bo Nix is in a world, is in a really difficult position on the road in Buffalo, in this, in January. But like the Bills defense at times has just been non-existent. And if Denver can control the football, I think they're going to try to run a lot to try to slow the game down. I think they're going to try to use tempo as much as they can. And they can get like a quick, early touchdown, get up quickly. I think they're just going to take the air out of the football and try to survive as long as they can. And Josh Allen will have to ultimately carry the Bills to victory, and he's certainly capable of it. But it's a question of, is he going to try to do too much and get himself in trouble that way? Or are the Broncos going to be able to do enough things to frustrate him and get like a sack fumble or an interception or something that changes the game? Again, everything says Buffalo should win this game. I just wonder if Denver is going to be able to make this game weird enough. Now, the other thing I think works against Denver is Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a giant coward And it cost the team football game this season. And I worry about that. Takes field goals at the worst times when he should go for it. I could easily see a situation where even though the Denver Broncos keep it close, Sean Payton literally ruins their chances of winning the game.
Very, very accurate way to put it. Getting some artwork sent over here for what will be for Browns 3D. Thank you, Seth. Thank you. What I kind of envisioned, we didn't even discuss it, is kind of what you put on. We'll have those up, obviously, starting next week. Green Bay, Philly. I just don't think Green Bay is there. I think Philly, something, certainly now with Jalen Hurts healthy, and hats off to the Eagles quarterback the last couple of weeks. Certainly went in there, showed it. But when there was the whole thing of, and it was weird because Philly, it was like, it was almost like they were trying to find a way to light their own fire because they were going so well. When AJ Brown's a little upset, he's not getting enough pay. The team hadn't lost a game in damn near, 10 to 11 weeks. Saquon, and look, there's going to be a week or two with Philly where somebody's on the outside looking in, whether it's Devontae Smith, whether it is AJ Brown, whether it is Saquon Barkley. There's just so many mouths to feed. At the end of the day, you win the game. It shouldn't matter. Green Bay, it's a nice team. The Christian Watson injury, in my opinion, it's a loss, but it's not a major loss. He hasn't had the impact this year that he's had in some other years. If Philly plays clean, Philly doesn't turn the ball over, which Jalen Hurts has not done this year. This is 10, 13 point Philly taking this one.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is just I don't think that Green Bay's defense can hold up against Philly's offensive line and the offense. And
like I have people telling me if Edgerrin Cooper could be the best linebacker in the NFL this weekend, then Green Bay will win this game. Well, Edgerrin Cooper's had, at times some nice parts of this rookie year, but I don't know about that.
The problem for the Packers is they're just not getting enough from their front, and they've been investing a lot.
They don't have their edge rushers. They're none of it. There's no pure athlete. And I'm not saying everybody's got a Myles Garrett, but you look at them and they're all kind of, bigger. They look like defensive ends that played in the late 80s and early 90s. Like, where is the guy that just turns the corner and there's nothing you can do about it?
Well, I mean, like they drafted Van Ness, who was a phenomenal athlete coming out of Iowa and was supposed to be this guy. And so far he just hasn't been. And he's not a true edge rusher. He's more of a 4-eye type 5, but still, they just don't get enough out of those guys. And when you're facing the two best tackles in football, and you've got a very, very motivated Lane Johnson who's pissed that he didn't get first team All-Pro, I think that they and Saquon Barkley are ultimately going to run over the Packers. And I think the Eagles' defense is good enough that Jordan Love is eventually going to make a mistake. They're down a receiver. They lost Christian Watson to an ACL tear. I don't think the Packers have enough. I think the Eagles are built to play and win this type of matchup, just physically up front, both sides of the ball.
Washington, Tampa Bay. And if I'm not wrong, I believe this was the week 1 matchup. This was the week 1 matchup. Was Jaden Daniels' debut was in Tampa Bay. Certainly a lot of things have changed. Certainly, look, Pete and I were Baker guys. So seeing Baker succeed, sure, it hurts a little bit. It does. But at the end of the day, we thought a lot of him. So obviously he's doing an outstanding job here. It's probably going to come down to who can play better defense. And, as scary as it may be, and Tampa Bay was on the ropes close the last couple of weeks. They were. It's going to come down to defense. I think this is probably going to be like my upset pick of the week is, because if Jaden Daniels can find a way to incorporate his legs, if he can find a way to incorporate his legs into this game, I'm going to take the Washington Commanders to upset Tampa in Tampa.
I think this is the most difficult game to pick.
I agree.
By far, because you just don't know. Both these teams are a little bit inconsistent in terms of the performance you get every week. But I'm going to take Tampa. And the reason, one, Baker Mayfield has playoff experience. He's been here before and he's played well. The other thing is that Dan Quinn's defenses, when teams have time to actually really get down and dirty with them, they've folded in big playoff games. This was a whole thing for Dallas for a couple of years where the Cowboys felt really good about their defense going into the playoffs, and then they completely melted down. And Washington obviously has different people in it in terms of running the defense, but I still worry about that happening, whereas I think Tampa's got more rugged guys that are accustomed to this, have been here before. Levante David, Vita Vea. I think they've got enough talent at all three levels to get it done. And then you've got a nice little surge from Bucky Irving and some of these other things. It's just giving Tampa a little bit extra juice. Now, having said all that, Jaden Daniels is capable of just taking the game over by himself. And that's why this becomes very dangerous, because he's just that good. But I think Tampa's got a little bit more talent, a little bit more I think evidence that they can handle this situation, and I think Tampa's going to win this one.
And just I was correct. Obviously, this was the week 1 matchup. Jaden Daniels was 17 of 24 for only 184 yards, which was good. Keep in mind, though, some of this was garbage time. Did get his legs involved. 16 carries, 88 yards. Washington did not run the ball much whatsoever, besides what Jaden Daniels was able to contribute. If you do want to look at maybe what an X factor could be in this game, Terry McLaurin has been outstanding. Terry McLaurin, week 1 between Washington and Tampa, was 2 receptions for 17 yards. Baker was 24-30 that day for 289, had 4 touchdowns. Mike Evans had 2. Jalen McMillan, who has been a hot streak lately for Tampa Bay, did have a 32-yard reception for a touchdown in that game. Chris Godwin was a huge factor, so certainly, things to look out for there. Closing it out, and certainly, I believe it is now official, Pete, that this game is now going to be played in Arizona. Are we correct here? Yes, Minnesota and the Rams. Yes. So after much ado, and look, honestly, you should have just made that decision earlier. I understand, you don't want to take the home field away from a team that earned it. That city, that area has just so much more that they have to worry about right now. And obviously every, thoughts, and it's devastating, and, and seeing this almost, nightly peeking in on it, and just seeing the absolute and total devastation, just, crushing. Certainly there's no way around that. But the NFL is a business. The business does have to go on. Minnesota, the Rams, I don't know if it's good for Minnesota what happened last weekend or not. The Rams, there's a lot going on with the Rams. Cooper Kupp is kind of a guy that doesn't seem like he's, any type of factor right now. Puka Nacua is obviously, taking that over in spades. Kieran Williams, I look at him and I'm just like, I don't see it. I just don't get how and then you watch an entire Rams game and you're like, all right, that's how Kieran Williams is successful. He's kind of like Novocaine. He just keeps going. He keeps going. He gets the job done. Minnesota, Sam Darnold is obviously going to have to get much more efficient in the red zone. What they did last week in Detroit, certainly was not going to cut it. That being said, some of the players that, are in the Detroit secondary certainly maybe aren't in the Los Angeles secondary. This for me, it's probably a coin flip. I really don't know which way this is going to go. Does it help either team that the game is moved to Arizona just from a mental aspect? It's not going to be a Ram home game, but it is a Ram home game. I think I'm going to and this is huge. Let's not kid ourselves. This is enormous for Sam Darnold. This is enormous. If Sam Darnold can win this game, get to the next round, this is just tacking on. It'll be a nice free agent contract for Sam Darnold. But you get to the point, where he is, quarterback of a team, of the Final Four team in the NFC. There's going to be a lot of people come calling because maybe they do have concerns about this draft class. I'm going to give the edge. I think Sam Darnold going to pull it off. Minnesota over LA.
Yeah, this game's tougher than you'd think because I think Minnesota has a pretty decent talent advantage. Where I think the Rams have a shot is that at times Matthew Stafford can carve up the type of things that Minnesota and Brian Flores may throw at him in terms of that heavy blitz and some of those other stuff. At the same time,
Tyler Higbee, 9 receptions, 62 yards, but just enough to keep annoying him.
Either that, or he may go the complete opposite, where he then throws three picks. One of them's a touchdown, and
Van Ginkel.
That type of stuff. But the flip side of that is if the Rams front, and I think Minnesota's got enough talent on the offensive line to deal with it. But Sam Darnold is not great under pressure. And if the Rams can consistently drive on him and you get guys that are able to put pressure on him between Kobe Turner and the rookies that they've got there, then that could lead to him to making some mistakes that you saw this past week where he was just erratic in terms of his accuracy and missing things. Having said that, I don't know how the Rams are going to deal with Justin Jefferson. I don't know how the Rams are going to deal with the overall amount of weapons that the Vikings have. TJ Hawkinson is a good player. Jordan Addison is a very good player. They're getting enough out of the running game to keep teams off balance. And that may be the key for Minnesota, is to try to keep the Rams defense off balance. The Rams have a tendency to play a little bit above their weight. Sean McVay does a really good job with them. I just think Minnesota's going to be a little too much and ultimately pull this off. But this does have some sneaky upset potential just because of Matthew Stafford being a veteran. And if Brian Flores gets caught in situations that he doesn't, that Stafford hasn't answered for, and the Rams haven't answered for it, with Puka Nacua and those guys, then that could be a puncher's chance type thing where they land that one big punch and they win it.
Okay, so there you have it. I have them all marked down. We will track them throughout the entire playoffs. There are a couple games here. Certainly, it looks like we have 3 here where Pete and I are differing here. Pete usually wins these, I'm not gonna lie, and because there's been a couple where I tried to really, really, really try to outsmart myself, and certainly didn't happen. I think there was one a couple of years ago where I called for Tennessee to beat New England, and then I backed out, and that probably would have made the difference there. So that tells you all that you need to know about that. But other Browns topics, we're not going to get to today, but obviously will come up. There will be, a London game, Jacksonville, the Jets, and of course the Cleveland Browns hosting games. My first reaction is sorry, guys, in London. I mean, sorry. That's hey, but if you're an NFL draft fan in London, you're going to get to see a lot of those guys right off the bat in their rookie years. Kaylee Bronson, moved on. I got to be honest, man, some of the stuff, because you get tagged in things, whatever. Some people, man, just get better with your lives, man. Seriously, just get better with your lives. Some of the things y'all say, it's just not worth it. And I'll be honest with you, it ain't funny. It wasn't funny when you were 12. It's not funny now that you're grown adults. Okay. Certainly she has moved on to something. And, if you know her and you know her story, this was probably something that was extremely appealing to her and extremely difficult to say no to, as far as where she came through her youth background, her athletics, all of that stuff. So obviously good luck to Kaylee. Deshaun Watson's injury, certainly discussed here at length, covered yesterday's bowl game, gave you some thoughts on tonight's game, certainly what we're looking for from a Cleveland Browns perspective, the game itself, playoff picks. Pete Smith, appreciate you joining me over here. Guys, I do like to have guests. It makes things flow better for me. And the conversation becomes better. Some, solo shows are great. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them. But sometimes it just feels like you were blowing out, points and not maybe getting as deep into them. Point, counterpoint creates, in my opinion, for great chat, great podcasts. So make sure you're checking, Pete Smith out here. I've already, they're starting to show me the numbers here of, the written content that these guys here and gals are pushing out here at the OBR. It has been outstanding already for this month. It is only going to grow. So, Pete, hats off. Jack Duffin, of course, Jacob Roche, you guys, Sam Panic, everybody's pumping out stuff for you guys daily. Barry, of course, it's outstanding stuff. I've known certainly about the OBR friends here, but just the little I get integrated in, I'm starting to see it more and more firsthand. This is a place you want to be. Again, you want that insider coverage. You want to be able to see stuff from Lane as quickly as possible, stuff from Brad Stainbrook as quickly as possible, because they are bringing you a ton of information that is coming to you from other sources that are claiming to give you the information first. Just letting you know, I'm not lying. That is straight from the heart. This is Browns 3D. This is it. Now we are here at the OBR. We have set up camp. We'll, work out everything, kinks, things more show specific to, trying to, brand each show here under the OBR umbrella. But this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, brought to you now, and who knows, maybe forever, here on the OBR. Everybody have a great weekend. It is a lot of football and enjoy the hell out of it.